Hey friends, welcome to kodEdge. In this session, we will see how to integrate application load balancer with the autoscaling group. As you see in the diagram, we will create the autoscaling group with the help of launch template. So what is launch template? Launch template contains the configuration to initialize or to launch the EC2 instance in the autoscaling group. After that, we will create the application load balancer. Then we will create a security group for the application load balancer, which will accept HTTP traffic from anywhere. Then we will also create security group for our autoscaling group, that is for our underlying EC2 instances, which will accept traffic only from the application load balancer. So we will also deploy Apache HTTP server on our EC2 instances, and we will deploy sample HTML in the EC2, which will return IP address of that EC2 instance just for testing purpose. So whenever user request URL of application load balancer will forward that request to the EC2 instance in the autoscaling group. And one of the EC2 instance will return the sample HTML to the user. Okay. And we will also see how to create autoscaling policies and how to create CloudWatch alarm in the CloudWatch service. So that whenever there is an increase in the load on your application, our autoscaling group will automatically increase the number of EC2 instances. So we will see that as well in the demonstration. So before starting on the hands-on, first understand the few concepts. So what's an autoscaling group? An autoscaling group contains a collection of EC2 instances that are treated as a logical grouping for the purpose of automatic scaling and the management. So what it means? Autoscaling group help you scale out or scale in EC2 instances to match load for your application. So here, what is the meaning of scale out? Scale out means adding the EC2 instance, and scaling means removing the EC2 instance. It also ensures that you have minimum and maximum number of EC2 instances running in the autoscaling group. Okay, it helps you to monitor EC2 instance health, and when it found any instance is unhealthy or terminated, it will automatically create it and register it in the load balancer. So whenever you configure your autoscaling group, you need to define this type of sizes. So what is minimum size? Our autoscaling ensures that your group never goes below this size. What is maximum size? Autoscaling ensures that your group never goes above this size. And what is the desired capacity? Desired capacity means autoscaling ensures that your group has this many instances. So whenever you define or configure your autoscaling group for the first time, it will run the number of EC2 instances equal to desired capacity. Okay, let's say for example, you have mentioned desired capacity equal to 2. So whenever you start your autoscaling group, it will run 2 EC2 instances in the group. Now let's understand autoscaling policies. So there are multiple types of autoscaling policies that AWS provides us. So first policy is dynamic scaling policy. So dynamic scaling policy can be created by the 3 ways. So first policy is target tracking scaling policy. Second is step scaling, and third is simple scaling. So there are 2 more policies that AWS provides us for the configuration. The second one is predictive scaling policy, and last one is schedule scaling policy. So we are going to see all the policies individually. Let's start with the target tracking scaling policy. So what is target tracking scaling policy? It means it increases and decreases the current capacity of the group based on the Amazon CloudWatch metrics and the target value. So what is CloudWatch metrics? So whenever you deploy the application on the EC2 instance send periodically metrics to the CloudWatch service. And there are certain predefined metrics that AWS provides us. So these are the predefined metrics that AWS provides us. But also you can create your custom metrics as well. Now let's take an example. Let's say you have created autoscaling group with this capacity. That is minimum EC2 instance is 1, desired capacity equal to 2, and maximum EC2 instances you want will be 5. Now how you can create target tracking scaling policy here? Let's say you want to maintain average CPU utilization equal to 50%, irrespective of load on your application. So let's say tomorrow there is increase in the load, you want your CPU utilization should stay up to 50%. So what autoscaling group will do? It will add the EC2 instances based on some algorithm. So here you just need to mention how much CPU utilization you want to maintain. Now autoscaling group will decide how many EC2 instances it want to add. It may add 1 EC2 instance, it may add 2 EC2 instance. That's depend on the auto-scaling group, but it will not cross above maximum size. It will be under the maximum size of the capacity. Okay, so that's what target tracking scaling policy is. And also there is one more feature that this scaling policy provide. It creates the CloudWatch alarm automatically for us. Now next, understand the step scaling policy. So what is step scaling policy? It increases and decreases the current capacity of the group based on the set of scaling adjustment, which is also known as step adjustments. So it requires you to create CloudWatch alarm for the scaling policy. Okay. Now understand what is a set of scaling adjustment. So let's take an example. Let's say we have deployed our application on the EC2 instance, and we have defined capacity like minimum capacity is 1, desired capacity equal to 1, and the max capacity is a 6. And here we will define the multiple steps. So what it means? So when average CPU utilization is between 30 to 40%, then add one EC2 instance. Okay. Next, when average CPU utilization between 50 to 60%, then add two EC2 instance. Okay. Third step is when there is a CPU utilization between 70 to 80%, then add two EC2 instance. So this is how you need to define multiple steps. Okay. So here we are defining the range of our metrics, and based on that we are defining the number of EC2 instances that we want to add. So what is the difference between target tracking scaling policy and a step scaling policy? In a target tracking scaling policy, we just mention how much CPU utilization we want. Okay, so we have not mentioned how many EC2 instances we want to create. So here we need to define both the configuration. We defining the metrics, how much metrics value we want, and on the basis of metrics, how many EC2 instances we want to add. And one more thing here, we need to create the CloudWatch alarm. So CloudWatch alarm will monitor the metrics. Okay. Now, whenever CPU utilization go beyond 30 to 40%, or whenever CPU utilization is between the 30 to 40%, our CloudWatch service will trigger the CloudWatch alarm, and our auto-scaling group will add the EC2 instance in the group. Now let's understand the next scaling policy, that is simple scaling policy. So here, what is the meaning of simple scaling? It increases and decreases the current capacity of the group based on a single scaling adjustment with a cooldown period between each scaling activity. And it also requires you to create the CloudWatch alarm for the scaling policy. So what is the difference between simple scaling and the step scaling? So first difference is you need to create a single scaling adjustment in the simple scaling, and in the step scaling you need to create a multiple scaling adjustment. And second difference is in a simple scaling, there is a cooldown period between each scaling activity. Okay. Now let's take an example of auto scaling group. Now let's say you have defined capacity like minimum equal to 1, desired capacity equal to 1, and maximum capacity equal to 3. Then how you can define simple scaling policy? You need to define just single scaling adjustment. That is, when CPU utilization is equal to 50%, then add two EC2 instances in the auto scaling group. That's it. Now let's understand the next scaling policy, that is predictive scaling policy. So what it means? Predictive scaling uses machine learning to predict capacity requirements based on the historical data from the CloudWatch. So if you see the graphs, the first graph is for the load, second graph is for the capacity. And if you observe carefully, the vertical bar shows the CPU utilization and the horizontal bar shows the time period. Same for the capacity as well. The vertical bar shows the instance count and the horizontal bar shows the time period. Now what happened in the predictive scaling policy? It observes the past data, that is the historical data of your application. So here it is observing the CPU utilization of your application. So in the red line, it is showing the actual CPU utilization. And based on this data, it is predicting the upcoming CPU utilization. Okay. Same for the capacity as well. In the red line, it is showing the actual observed capacity, and it is predicting based on this historical data. If you see in the blue line, it is showing the predicted instance count. So if you take the example of 8th of December, on 8th of December, it will increase the instance count up to 40 based on the historical data. So this is all about the predictive scaling policy. Now let's understand the next scaling policy, that is schedule scaling policy. So schedule scaling help you to set up your own scaling schedule according to predictable load changes. Okay. So for example, let's say you have deployed application on the EC2 instance, and you know in advance that every Friday there will be high load on your application. So here what you can do, you can define schedule scaling policy such that on every Friday night at 9 o'clock, add 5 EC2 instance in your auto scaling loop. So this is all about schedule scaling policy. Now let's move on to the demo. I will explain and demonstrate all the policies, how to create these policies, and I will also demonstrate how to create the auto scaling group, how to scale out and scaling the EC2 instances. So let's move in the AWS console. In the AWS console, search for EC2 service. And here, first we are going to create security group for our application load balancer and for the auto scaling group. So let's click on the security group option. Click on the create security group. And here we are going to create security group for application load balancer. So security group name will be security group for ALB. Okay. So let me copy the same name in the description. And what should be inbound rule? Inbound rule will be to accept HTTP traffic from the internet. So click on the add rule, select the HTTP, and here you can select the anywhere option and click on the create security group. So we have created security group for application load balancer. Next, we will create security group for auto scaling group. So let me give it name as security group for auto scaling. Let me copy same name in the description. And here our inbound rule will be to accept traffic only from the application load balancer. So click on the add rule. So here we will accept all TCP, and that is from our application load balancer. This is the security group for our application load balancer. Okay, we will require one more rule here to accept SSH traffic. Okay, because we want to connect to EC2 instance through SSH. So please select this rule as well, and here it will be from anywhere, and click on the create security group. Okay, so we have created security group for our application load balancer and for the auto scaling group. Now let's create the auto scaling group. So click on the auto scaling group option here and click on the create auto scaling group button, and here you can give name for it. Name will be YT demo auto scaling, and here you can find option for creating a launch template. So click on that. So in the launch template, you will find the configuration similar to the configuration of EC2 instance when you launch EC2 instance individually. So let me give it a name as a test template and select the OS. OS will be Amazon Linux, and select the instance type, that will be T2 micro because it is a free tier eligible. Then we are required key pair here. So I have already created the key pair. If you don't have key pair, just click on this create new key pair option and you can create a new key pair. Key pair is required to connect to EC2 instance through SSH. Okay. So next is a network setting. So we are not including any subnet configuration here. We can include it at the time of auto scaling group configuration. Next is a security group option. So we can select the existing security group. We have already created the security group for our auto scaling group. So select that one. So next is a EBS volume. So keep it as a default one and click on the advanced details. And you can find user data option here. And in the user data, we will provide a script to install Apache HTTP server. So let me copy the script. So what we are doing here, we are just doing first update. Then we are installing Apache HTTP server. Then we are starting the Apache server. After that, we are creating one sample HTML, which will return the IP address of the EC2 instance in the message, and we are deploying that HTML in this directory. Okay, and this script is going to execute as a root user. Let's click on the create launch template. Okay, so our launch template is created. So let me go back into the auto scaling group configuration and click on the refresh button and select your launch template. Okay, so here you can find the summary of your launch template and click on the next button. Okay, next is a network configuration. So you can select the default VPC configuration and we will select the all available availability zone. Okay, click on the next button. So next is a load balancing configuration. So we don't have load balancer currently. We will create a new load balancer. For that, you can select the attached to new load balancer option. Then load balancer type will be application load balancer. Let me change the name of our load balancer. It will be YT demo ALB. Then it will be internet facing. Then keep the availability zone as a default one. And here we will require the target group, so it will create automatically for us. Then select this option, that is turn on elastic load balancing health check. Please select this option and click on the next button. So here we can define the capacity for our auto scaling group. So desired capacity will be 1, minimum capacity will be 1, and maximum capacity we will define as a 2. Next is a scaling policies configuration. So we will not configure any scaling policy for now. We will do that later after creation of auto scaling group. So select the none here and click on the next. So this is optional, so click on the next. We don't want to add tags, so click on the next. And here you can find the summary of your auto scaling group. So our auto scaling group is this name. Then this is our launch template. So this is the network configuration. This is a load balancer configuration. This is a health check, and this is our capacity configuration. Okay, it's look good, so click on the create auto scaling group. So our auto scaling group is getting created. So if you go back into the load balancer, let me open the load balancer, and you can see it is creating a load balancer for us. So let me close this tab, and we will require to change one setting in the load balancer. So click on the load balancer name. Let's go into the security option, and here you can find it is used the security group of auto scaling group. So we need to change it to use our application load balancer security group that we have created. So click on the edit. Let's remove this and select the security group for application load balancer and save changes. Okay, so our load balancer is getting created. Let me go back into the auto scaling group, click on the auto scaling group name, and if you go into the activity, you can find the what are the activities it is performing in the background. So it says it is launching a new EC2 instance, it is updating the load balancer and the target group. So if you go into the instances, you can find it is creating the new instance. Okay, same thing you can see from here as well. If you go into the instance management in the auto scaling configuration, you can also find the same option here as well. Now let me go back into the load balancer. It is still provisioning, so we will wait for some time. So our load balancer is active, so copy the DNS name and let's run that URL from the browser. And we are getting message from our EC2, and we are also getting the IP address from our EC2 instance. So let me go back into the auto scaling group, and you can see here the instance health status is healthy. Okay, now next what we will do, we will create the auto scaling policies. Okay, so click on the auto scaling option here, that is automatic scaling, and here you can find the multiple policies for the configuration. So we will start with the schedule action policy. Click on the create schedule action, and you can configure your schedule action here. So what it means, so here you can define your minimum and the maximum capacity that you want to schedule. Click on the recurrences, that when you want to execute this policy, like every day, every week, or once, then you can specify the timing here when you want to execute this policy. Okay, so I am not going to create this policy because this is very difficult to show in the video. Next is a predictive scaling policy. So how you can configure it? So you can give your name of your policy here, and you can select the predefined metrics here. And next you need to specify the target utilization. So for example, let's say I have specified the CPU utilization and target utilization up to 50%. So what it will do, it will maintain the target utilization, that is CPU utilization, up to 50% irrespective of load. So let's say at the night the load is increased on your application, a predictive scaling policy automatically forecast it, and it will keep the target utilization up to 50%. So next setting is pre-launch instances. So what it does, in advance launch the EC2 instances. So let's say predictive scaling policy forecasted that at 10 o'clock we'll need to add 10 EC2 instance. Okay, so what it will do, before 5 minutes of your 10 o'clock, it will add 10 instance in advance. So this is setting for that. So I am not going to create this policy as well, because this required to run your EC2 instance at least for the 14 days. Okay, so I am clicking on the cancel button. So next is a dynamic scaling policy. So we are going to create the dynamic scaling policy. So click on the create dynamic scaling option. So here you can find the policy types. So there are three types of policies that we seen. First is a target tracking, then second is a step scaling, and third is a simple scaling. So we are going to create the target tracking scaling policy. So policy name will be target tracking policy. And here also it provides some predefined metrics. Okay, so we are going to use CPU utilization, and we will keep the target value as a 30. Okay, for demo purpose. And what does it mean? It means that it need to maintain the target value, that is CPU utilization, up to 30. Okay, so whenever there is an increase in the load, auto scaling group will automatically decide how many EC2 instance it want to add. So let's click on the create button, and you can see here, as required to maintain average CPU utilization at 30, add or remove capacity unit as required. Okay, now what it does, it creates a CloudWatch alarm automatically for us. So if you go into the CloudWatch service, and if you go into the all alarm section, so you can find here it has created two alarms for us. So what it says, the first condition is CPU utilization greater than 30, CPU utilizations less than 27. So these are the two alarms it has created. First alarm is to add the EC2 instance, that is for the scale out operation, and second alarm is to scale in operation. Okay, so these are the alarm created automatically by auto scaling group. So let me go back into the auto scaling group configuration. So now we will test this target tracking scaling policy. For that, we will connect to our EC2 instance, and we will put a load on EC2 instance for testing purpose. So click on the instance management, click on the instance ID, and we will connect to EC2 instance through SSH. So click on the connect, and we are going to use EC2 instance connect option. So click on the connect. So if you're not able to connect your EC2 instance, please add the SSH rule in the security group of your AutoScaling group. So now here in the EC2 instance, we will install one stress utility. Okay, you can find the details of the stress utility on the internet. So I have already command for it. So let me copy that command. This is the command to install stress utility, that is sudo yum install stress -y. So what it does, it put the load on your EC2 instance for testing purpose. Okay, so let me hit this command. So stress utility is installed. Let me clear the console. And now we will put the stress on our CPU of our EC2 instance. So let me copy the command for that. And command is sudo stress -CPU12 timeout 240 seconds. So what it will do, it will create the 12 worker threads to put the load on your CPU, and it will put the load for 240 seconds. Okay, now let me go back into the auto scaling group configuration, and if you click on the monitoring, let's go into the EC2 instance, and you can find the graph for your CPU utilization here. Okay, so this is the CPU utilization graph. Currently the load is just 0.577. Okay, so let me run that command. Okay, so it is started the putting load on our CPU, and let me go back into the alarm section. So every alarm has a three types of state. First state is okay. Okay means this alarm is not a triggered. Next stage is insufficient data. That means it don't have sufficient data for monitoring purpose. So once it get the data, it will, this state will be in okay state. Okay, and last stage is in alarm state. That means this alarm is triggered. So now let me go back into the EC2 instance graph, and let's wait for some time. Okay, so after 5 minutes, it is showing the load is increased, that is up to 95. So if you go into the alarm section, you can see alarm state is in alarm. So let me go back into the auto scaling group, and let's go into the activity section. And here you can see that it has launched the new EC2 instance. For some reason, it failed for the first time. And you can see here the reason why it is launching the new EC2 instance. So it says the monitoring alarm, that is target tracking. This is a alarm name was triggered. Okay. And the trigger due to this policy, target tracking policy, changing the desired capacity from 1 to 2. And you can also see the instance was started in response to difference between the desired and the actual capacity, increasing the capacity from 1 to 2. Okay. So somehow it failed for the first time, and next time it again started the new EC2 instance, and it is successful now. Now if you go into the instance management, you can see the tool EC2 instance, it has started. So if you go back into the load balancing URL, and if you refresh it, there are two IP addresses returning from the AutoScaling group. So let me go back into the AutoScaling group, and in the automatic scaling option, we will delete this target tracking policy for now. Now we will create the next policy, that is simple scaling policy. So click on this option, and here select the simple scaling of policy. So simple scaling and the step scaling policy both are almost same. If you click on the step scaling, you need to create the CloudWatch alarm, and you need to add the multiple steps here based on the action. So there are three types of action, that is add, remove, and set to. And you can define your capacity in the form of capacity unit or the percentage, and you need to add the multiple steps here. So we will create the simple scaling policy. So our policy name will be AWS CPU policy, and we need to create the CloudWatch alarm for that. So click on the CloudWatch alarm, and here you need to select the matrix. Okay, so click on the select matrix. So let's go into the EC2 by AutoScaling group. So this is our AutoScaling group name. So let's select the matrix name, that will be CPU utilization. So this is the option for that. So click on that and click on the select matrix, and here you can select the configuration for that. So we are using the statistics as an average. Okay, you can select the configuration as per your requirement. Okay, so I am selecting the average. Period will be 5 minutes, and threshold type will be static, and these are the multiple condition you can specify. So here I am using greater than, and value will be, let's select the 30, and you can see the same value in the graph as well. So this is the threshold value. After this threshold value, it will trigger this alarm. So click on the next. So we don't want to specify any notification. So these are the multiple steps that alarm can trigger. So in alarm means the matrix or expression is outside of defined threshold. In our example, if the matrix go beyond 30, this alarm will be in alarm state. Okay means the matrix or expression is within the defined threshold. And what is insufficient data? The alarm has just started, or not enough data is available for monitoring purpose. Okay, so these are the three states that any alarm can have. So click on the remove, because we don't want to send any notification, and we will click on the next. So next, give the alarm name. So alarm name will be CPU utilization for target group. Click on the next. So this is the summary of your alarm. So click on the create alarm button. So our alarm is created. So let me go back into our AutoScaling configuration. Click on the refresh button and select the CPU utilization for TG alarm that we have created. Now what action you want to take? So you can remove, add, or set to. We will add one EC2 instance, okay, because our maximum size of EC2 is 2, okay, that we set at the time of creation of our AutoScaling group. And you can specify capacity unit or percentage here. So I am selecting the capacity unit and click on the create. So our policy is created. Now to test this policy, we can set the alarm manually. Okay. So before this, let me go into the details, and we will reduce our desired capacity to 1. So let me edit this, make this desired capacity as a 1, and click on the update. So our AutoScaling group will automatically remove the 1 instance that we have added previously because of target tracking scaling policy. So if you go into the activity, it is terminating the one of the EC2 instance. Now to test our simple scaling policy, we need to run one command to set the alarm state. So let me go into internet and search for set alarm state. Okay, so you can select the first option from the amazon.com, and this is the command to set the alarm state. So command will be set alarm state, then hyphen hyphen alarm, then your alarm name, then the state value that we want to specify, and the state reason. So let me go back into the autoscaling group, and you don't need to run this command from the EC2. You can use the cloudshell option over here. So click on this option. So let me open this in the new tab. So here you can run that command. So I have already created the command. So let me copy that. The command will be AWS CloudWatch set alarm state. Alarm name will be CPUUtilzationForTG that we have created here. So same alarm name you can give here. So state value will be alarm because we want to trigger this alarm. For the state reason, you can give any reason for it. So let's run this command, and let's go back into the autoscaling group, and let's refresh our activity history. And if you go into the alarm section, let's refresh it, and you can see our alarm state is in alarm state. And if you go back into the history, you can see it is launching new EC2 instance based on our alarm. So if you go into the instance management, it is showing that it is adding the new EC2 instance. Okay, so this is how we have successfully created our autoscaling group. We also configure the autoscaling policies for scale out and scale in operation. If you go into the activity, when we change our desired capacity to 1, it has automatically terminated the EC2 instance. You can see that reason as well here, that desired capacity changing from 2 to 1 here. So for that reason, it has terminated one EC2 instance. Then next, it has launched a new EC2 instance because we have triggered the alarm, that is CPUUtilzationForTG, which was in the alarm state. And for that reason, it increased the capacity from 1 to 2. So if you go back into the load balancer URL, and if you refresh it, you are getting the IP address from the both the EC2 instance. So this is all about this lecture. Thanks for watching the video.